This is one of the coolest AI projects that I've ever played with. Now, it is called MiroFish, however you want to pronounce it, and the finished result ends up giving you a really detailed knowledge graph that looks something like this, that allows you to effectively predict the future by using a swarm intelligence of hundreds of different agents across hundreds of different runs. It is insanely cool. In this video, I want to explain to you exactly what it is, how it works, and how you can run it yourself so that you can make your own predictions. Now, I'm just quickly showing you the knowledge graph that was built here just on some basic sample data that I passed in to attempt to predict the future prices of Dubai real estate. Now, after I ran through this whole simulation, you can see that it generated a full detailed report. Let's go over to it here, saying, this is the forecast of Dubai real estate, downtown specifically, where I live in Dubai, over the next 10 years. Based on all of the information that we found. There's 32 interactive agents that have been communicating, debating, writing articles, chatting with each other, and then I can go and talk with any of these individual agents. So I can just pick any of the ones that's here. We could see we have UAE stock market analysis. We have, I think, Trump, Nancy Pelosi. Like, it's kind of funny what this ends up creating. And anyways, for this to make sense, let me first explain what is MiroFish and why should you care. So I just generated a quick presentation. Let's dive into it. But what if you could simulate millions of people thinking, debating, and reacting to what happens next? Well, that is MiroFish. At least at the time that I'm recording this video, it's probably much larger now. It had 51,000 stars on GitHub. It was built in 10 days, funded with over $4 million, had 7.6 thousand forks, and was the #1 global trending GitHub repository that's just recently being picked up. Now, effectively, what this allows you to do is run a parallel digital world where you have autonomous agents that are simulating something like Reddit or Twitter and communicating with each other to attempt to forecast the future. Now, effectively, what you do is you give it some base information, so like a research report or trend data or anything that you want it to use as its kind of context for the simulation, and then you give it a very simple question. In my case, I gave it a full detailed research report of all of the historical data of Dubai real estate, as well as current news, because obviously there's a war in the Middle East. And then I just asked it, what's the future price of 2-bedroom apartments in Dubai real estate going to be in, 2035? Because I own an apartment there and I'm interested to know, am I going to lose money or am I going to make money on that recent purchase? Now, the way that it works is the following. It has 5 stages. The first stage is that it builds an intense knowledge graph, like you kind of saw earlier that I showed you, that tries to associate all of this information together, so it's not just randomly searching through files, but it's using kind of this deep graph network. Next, what it does is it starts to set up the environment. So it actually will, based on the data you pass it, create a various number of autonomous AI agents that have different personas, goals, tasks, etc. It will have, in my case, me, Tim, the Dubai real estate investor. It will have Nancy Pelosi. It will have Donald Trump. It will have a UAE stock analysis. It will have a US military guy. It will have someone from Iran. Like, it will create all of these agents to make this really interesting world where they can all chat with each other and have their own opinions. It then will run this dual simulation where it runs in 2 different worlds, which we'll talk about in a second, and then generates a report and allows you to interact with everything in the environment to understand the rationale of these agents. Now, the graph building is going to extract all of this data from the information that we give it. Again, I'll talk about how that works in a second. Then it's going to build these agent profiles, right? So we have name, age, memory, social, all of this kind of stuff for the environment. Then it's going to do a dual platform simulation. So it's going to kind of simulate Twitter versus Reddit. These agents can like posts, they can comment, they can dislike, they can repost, they can, quote reply, just like you would do on a real social network. So they're actually chatting and communicating with each other. And then based on all of the information, it's going to generate a report using a specialized report agent and then perform this deep interaction, which allows you to go in and just see everything that's happening. And anyways, if you're interested, what's powering this is the following tech stack. So Oasis, this is kind of the thing that's doing the simulation engine. So that's how we're setting up this kind of graph network. We have Zep Cloud. This is the only paid tool. However, you can use it for free with limited credits. Fast API, Vue.js, and then you can use any OpenAI SDK compatible LLM. So you can use Claude, you can use OpenAI, you can use Minimax, doesn't matter. And again, the main kind of thing is that it's powered by Oasis. Now, just a few quick real world examples to give you some context here. polymarket prediction trading bot. Someone made like 4K predicting the future using this type of bot. There was a BTC fear and greed index. People are actually using this to analyze and figure out what the next chapter of a book might be like, or the ending of certain movies or stories. Public opinion simulation. And anyways, I'm not going to get into the origin story because I don't think that's too important. Thing is, this is super cool. Now I want to show you exactly how you can set it up so you can run it for yourself and see it working in the real world. Okay, so this is the official MiroFish GitHub repository. I'm going to leave a link to it in the description. And again, it is open source, as well as Oasis, which is the main thing powering this. So you could just download on your computer and start running it. However, it does take a long time to run. It's a little bit complicated to set up. And if you just want to play with it, you probably don't want to spend 3 hours, messing with it, configuring it, etc. So I actually was able to partner with Hostinger on this video, who has a one-click deployment option for MiroFish. To my knowledge, they're the first company to offer this. So for as low as literally $6.50 per month, or you can go up to some of the better plans, I'd recommend the KVM2 plan, which is $9 per month. You can just have a deployed version of MiroFish that you can access from any device with no hardware requirements. You can plug in your own LLM and you can run it securely on a virtual private server so that's not using up your host resources. So what I would suggest, and what I've personally done for this video, is I've just deployed a new Hostinger VPS. In order to do that, you can go to the link in the description. You can just press this deploy button here. You can choose your plan. Again, I would recommend the KVM2 plan. And from here, you can just select your period. If you go with the period 12 months or greater, then you're able to use the discount code here, Tech with Tim, which will give you an additional 10% off because of my partnership with Hostinger. And then you can go ahead, press on continue, and this is going to automatically deploy it for you in a secured environment using a Docker container, and then just give you one button to start using this, which again is going to save you a massive amount of time and give you a secured environment where you can run this as many times as you want. Let me show you. All right, so as you go through the deployment process, whether you're running this on your own machine or you're going to use something like Hostinger, you will need an LLM API key. I'm going to recommend you go with OpenAI, but you can use anything that you want. And you're also going to need a Zep Cloud API key. Again, the steps I'm going to show you here, you'll need regardless, so make sure you follow along. Now, what I'm going to suggest is that you just go to OpenAI and you just create a new API key. So you can just go to platform.openai.com. I'm going to make a new key. I'm going to call this MiroFish video and just make the key like so. Copy that, and then I will just paste that directly inside of here, and it will automatically get set as an environment variable. Then you can select the model that you want to use. Now, this can be a little bit expensive because it is running a ton of different models. In my case, the simulation I showed you before cost me $3 running with GPT-4o. So I would suggest that you don't use a super high-end model like Opus 4.6 or 5.4, because that probably is going to cost you like 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks depending on the number of models that you have. GPT-4o works completely fine. It's obviously not the best model. It has some biases, but if you just want to play around with it, that's probably a good one to stick with. If you want to use a different model that's not from OpenAI, you're going to have to change this base URL. Now, all of the model providers have their own base URL. For example, Minimax has a different base URL. Anthropic has a different base URL. And as long as you change the URL to the official one from the provider that you want to use, and you put a compatible LLM name with that base URL, you are good to go. Now, this uses something that I believe is called OpenAI or Open API Standard. So any LLM that supports that you can use here. Again, you just put the key, change the URL, and then have the correct model name. Now, the last step is you need a Zep Cloud API key. Now, this is the only non-open source thing. If you wanted to change from Zep, that would require a lot more configuration. So what I would suggest is go to this URL, app.getzep.com. You can see I'm on it right here. Make a free account. You don't need to pay for it. And then what you're going to do is just create a new project. So I made a new demo project right here. Let's just make a new one and go, project YouTube or something, okay? And I've actually paid for this myself, but you don't need to pay for it. And then you can make a new API key. I'm just gonna go with Tim or something, and then just copy it, okay? And obviously you don't wanna share that with other people. Now, if you're wondering, how do I get to the API key? Just go to your project, go into the settings, find API keys, press add key. It's gonna give you 1,000 credits for free, no credit card information required. And if you want more, obviously you can pay for more. In my case, I did just because I'm running a bunch of simulations. So I'm gonna paste in that API key, and then press on deploy. We'll just wait a few minutes, and then again, using Docker Hostinger, we'll securely deploy this. It will give us a URL we can go to, which is HTTPS, so secured. We just press on it, and then we can start running the simulation. Now, while Hostinger is spinning this up, I will just quickly mention that if you did want to run this on your own computer, you can do that. In order to do so, you will need to fill in the environment variables in this project. You will need to clone this repository and then run the setup commands as it states here. It's not overly complicated, but again, it can just take a little bit of time. And if you're not technical, it's going to be easier to go with the method that I shared just to get it up and running and working immediately. Anyways, go to this repo if you want to run it locally. If you want to use Hostinger, then of course use the link in the description. It's going to take a few minutes. It will provision everything, and then you'll just be able to go right here. I'll show you in a second. Press a single link, go to a website, and start using the simulation. And you can actually share that with other people if you want, but just be careful because it is public, so other people would be able to then run the simulation on your behalf. And if you have this connected to an external LLM, that could cost you money. So just be aware of that. Probably set a limit on your API account so that you don't spend more money than you're comfortable spending. All right, so the deployment is finished. You can now see that I can just press this open button under Docker Manager in the Hostinger portal here. When I do that, it's going to open this up. Now you're going to notice that it's Chinese because this was developed by someone in China. So I am just going to translate it automatically, which your browser should do if you're working in Google Chrome. And now you have the URL, which you can use anytime you want to run a prediction. Now, the way that this works is that you just need to upload some kind of source data. It can be multiple files, but what you're going to want to do is upload like a markdown file or a PDF or a text file, any data that you want this to reason on. If you were going to build this out yourself, you could connect it to like real world data, have it pulling in more stuff. That is, again, is a lot more complicated and not supported natively. What this does is just map the source data that you give it. So the data is super, super important to begin with, and make sure that you spend some time gathering that. Now, what I did is I used Claude just to go do some research on everything happening in the Middle East right now, as well as to pull all of the real estate figures for Dubai for the past year, the last quarter, trends, all of that kind of stuff. So I gave it a really long prompt to Claude. I let it run for like 20 minutes. I let it spend all of my Opus credits generating this massive report. And you can see that I have like maybe a 20, 30 page long report here in Markdown format, which is what I'm going to pass it. So you need to generate the report first. Again, Claude is really good at doing this, or any research agent. Once you have it, you could just pass it in. So what I did is I just dragged it in here. Again, you could add more if you want. And then what I'm going to do is give this a prompt to discuss what I want it to do. Now, it shows you an example, right? Use natural language input to simulate or predict demand, e.g. what public opinions you want. So I'm going to say, predict the future price of 2-bedroom apartments in downtown Dubai in the next 1, 2, 5, and 10 years based on the current market data, as well as what's happening in the Middle East and the sentiment among investors based on the war with Iran. Okay, now by the way, if you're wondering how I'm dictating that, because I use this in all of my videos, I'm using a tool called Whisper Flow. It's free to use. I have a long-term partnership with them. I'm going to leave a link to it in the description if you want to check it out, but it gives you extremely fast AI-powered voice dictation, which is significantly better than what's built in to your host operating system. And it will even do things like automatic formatting if you're writing an email, etc., etc. Anyways, it's very, very good. Make sure you check it out if you want this dictation engine. Anyways, it's very, very good. Point is, I use it all the time, so I figured I would mention it. Now, what I'm going to do is just press on Start the Engine. There's 5 phases like I talked about before. You do need to kind of click through them. So it's going to upload the document. It's going to start building the graph. That takes a little bit of time. Once that's done, I'll be right back and we'll move through the phases and I'll show you exactly how it works. All right, so it's in the process of building out the graph right now. You can actually move around the entities and kind of see what's going on. If it starts to lag for you, just disable the edge labels because sometimes those make it a little bit laggier, at least in my experience. And you'll be able to see kind of a little dashboard at the bottom that shows you the progress. It's not always 100% accurate, but anyways, give it a few minutes and then it will move you to the next stage. Okay, so the graph has just finished being built here. Now it will start to be built out more and more and connect more relationships as the system continues. But the next step here is going to be to enter the environment setup. So what we're going to do is press enter here. And what we're going to automatically see is that we're going to start generating agent personas. Now these are the various agents that are going to be a part of our simulation. It will automatically determine how many of them we need. So in this case, it's expecting 29. And then how many we currently have. So you can see that we have like UAE Ministry of Defense, Goldman Sachs, Nancy Pelosi, Trump 871, right? So it's creating usernames for them for the social network that's about to be generated. And then we have character introduction, we have the unique memory imprint, right? All of this stuff. You don't need to do this. It will happen automatically based on the question and the source data that you give it. So we'll take a second here to generate them, and then once it does, we're going to move on to generate the dual platform simulation. Okay, so you can see it's automatically moved to this. Again, you don't need to do anything here. It will automatically step through. What it's going to do is attempt to create a simulated amount of time. So it's going to say, all right, I want to simulate 120 hours across this many rounds of communication. And the number of rounds that you run is how many times the agents kind of go into this debate dashboard and start chatting with each other. So if you want this to be a really drawn out prediction, you can run, 100 rounds. That's going to take you a lot of real world time and API cost and compute, but you also could just run 10 rounds where maybe it only takes 5 minutes to execute. I'll show you that in 1 second. Okay, so you can see here that it says simulation duration 120 hours. The duration of each round is 60 minutes. The agents are only working during certain times. There's morning hours, low period, and it's really trying to simulate maybe at certain times of the day, people are going to message different things. So you can see UAE Ministry of Defense. This is the period in which it's active. Goldman Sachs is active at this period. And the reason you have that is so not all agents are always active. So you can have different agents communicating during different real world time periods. Then you have the percentage of activity, emotional tendency, all of this kind of stuff, right, which is automatically generated for you. It then goes through the phases of what's going to happen here with the inference and then starts doing the initial activation orchestration. So these are hot topics that need to be talked about, like the Iran war, Middle East geopolitical, ceasefire and negotiations. You get the idea, and it starts creating a few general posts to start the communication. Then we get to the preparation. So at this point, what we're going to want to do is adjust the number of wheels. Now, the wheels is going to dictate how many times this simulation is running and how many times we kind of go and repeat this. So if I move down to 10, which is the minimum, this is what I'm going to do for this video just because I want it to run quickly. We can move all the way up to 120. Now, we'll give you a prediction of what the real world processing time is here based on the number of wheels that you run. So it's a little bit confusing in terms of the timing, but essentially what it's going to attempt to do is simulate 120 hours of real world time, simulate real world time. So it's not 120 hours, it's simulated real world time across 60-minute rounds of these agents communicating with each other. So if I put this to 10, it's effectively doing this 10 times. If I put this 15, it's doing this 15 times. So I'm going to put 10, I'm going to go start here, the parallel simulation, and what we're going to see now is that we have two worlds happening. We have an info plaza and a topic community. One is like X, one is like Reddit, right? And you'll start seeing these agents generating various posts, replying, quote replying, retweeting, liking, whatever, and effectively debating across these rounds. So because I put that we're going to have those 10 wheels, it's a 0 out of 10. It will then tell you how much time has elapsed, and we should have various different actions happening. So you can see on the right-hand side, we have Truth Social post, EMAR making a post, UAE Ministry of Defense. If there's comments and we click into it, we'll see those, right? And then we have the same thing here on the Info Plaza where we get slightly different types of communication. Now, the round tracker you see here for me has never really worked properly, so don't worry too much about like the real-time status of what's going on. But effectively, once you finish this, and again, the higher wheels, the better response you're going to get, you can start generating the report. Now, what this is going to do is use an internal report generating agent. It's still going to use your API key, but it has some better system prompts, context engineering, etc., where it's going to start creating different parts of a report that is then the ultimate prediction or answering the question that you asked at the beginning. So let's wait for the report to be generated and we can quickly have a look at it. So interestingly, the way it generates this report is that it's actually interviewing the agents that were a part of this process that have now been influenced by the other agents chatting with them. So you'll see that there is, if we go look here, like an interview process. I got to find where it is. So you'll see that if we go here, there's like an agent interview where it's interviewing all of these different agents. And then you can see that there's like different worlds where they're answering different questions based on the world. So it's really interesting to read through this. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but the way it generates the report is not just like, combine all of the context. It's a pretty deep process where it's doing this like deep insight, interviewing the various different agents, and you can see what agents are influencing what the overall prediction actually ends up being. You can also see that we have this like kind of valid memory, historical memory, entities involved, and now we can see the report is fully complete and we can read through it and see what the ultimate result is. Now again, I'm not going to bore you just by reading through everything, but if I can come back up here, there is a button that says like deep interaction. Yeah, so it says entering deep interaction. So we can press that button now that the report is generated. And what we can do is just ask any general question that we want to the report agent. That will then allow us to interact with the report and get the ultimate result. So what is the ultimate conclusion? Is the price going to increase? Right, so I can dictate that, and let's see what result that gives us. Says the ultimate conclusion is the prices are likely to increase over the long term, especially in central and business districts due to Dubai's strategic location. Okay, there you go. And then what I can do is press this button, and I can see any agent that I want, and I can chat with them. So if I want to chat with the simulated Donald Trump, what do you think of Dubai? You can just ask them a question and see what their influence was based on the simulation, which is just kind of fun at minimum to be able to go in here and see the result. So I'm actually curious. I don't know what Trump's going to say here. Let's get the response. And you can see fascinating city, blah, 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 blah. And you get the idea. And it's funny, when I was looking at this before, if you look at like the tweets from Trump, for example, they're kind of in his voice, which is just really funny to see how they've set that up. Now, look, there is a lot more stuff we could go through related to this, but generally, I think you should just play with it, try it out, host it, run a few simulations. It's really fun. It's really interesting. If you want to do that, again, the easiest way to do so is using Hosting, our long-term partner of the channel. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.